Hi guys, very good evening to you. Welcome to the chapter number 2 in this VBA tutorial section. So, as you know, my name is Ajay Parmar, and today is going to be your very interesting the chapter, because from here actually you will start writing the codes, and I really can't wait for this because this is the first time when we are going to write the programs in the VBA editor window, and that will give you a very good amount of confidence, right? So you start working on the VBA with this the beginning of this chapter. Okay, so what we are going to discuss today is so we call it the variables. Okay, variables. What do you mean by the variables? So we will be discussing a lot of things in this chapter. Okay, now guys, so variables basically it's a name. It's a name which you give in the VBA coding to use the values from the Excel. Now the values can be integer, the values can be text, the string, alphanumeric, whatever it is, right? So variables basically that's you can consider the variables as kind of a parking space. Suppose you're living in a society, and in that society you have bought the land, you have purchased the parking the space for your vehicle. Right now, obviously, if you are using the two-wheeler, then you would go ahead and you consider purchasing the small space, where your two-wheeler can fit, right? And if you are using the four-wheeler, then obviously you will go for the bigger space. So the idea is that what I'm trying to tell you is that variables are of different sizes. Okay, and that depends upon which number basically we are supposed to use. If we have a big number, then there is a different data type which we use for the variable. If we have a small number, we have a different section of the data types for the variable. So in this chapter we are going to do talk about the two very important things. One is the variables and the data types. What do you mean by the data type? So this is something we're going to discuss right away. So before I go further, I want to tell you, let's quickly go and check this, the snapshot. This is something which I want to show you. So this is basically the data type summary. You can log into the Google and you can search there VBA data types, variables, the types of the variables in the VBA, and you will get to see a lot of links. And so as you know, on the Google we have so many articles almost on every subject. So when you type in data types in the VBA, you will get to see this kind of a detail, right? It is not required, but I'm just telling you, right? You will get this in your this video course. So look at this here. So we have the data type, we have the range and the storage size. Okay, we will come to this storage size little later, but right now we are interested in the data types and the range. Now guys, data type means, look at this, we have the byte, we have the boolean, we have the integer, we have the long, we have the single, double, currency, decimal, date, object, string, variant, right? There are so many different types of the data types, right? So definitely we will talk about what are they and why we use them, under what circumstances, what situations, which data type is to be used. And also one thing, that in the Excel VBA we don't use the currency in the decimal, so you can completely neglect that, right? We're going to work on the rest of all the data types, right? Maybe we will talk about this date and the object in the coming sessions, but in this session, in this variable chapter, we are going to talk about the byte, the boolean, integer, long, single, double, and then we're going to talk about the variant and the string as well. Okay, now if you look at this carefully, the data type byte, it has a range called 0 to 255 as per the Excel VBA. Okay, now what do you mean by it? Now guys, as I was telling you that basis what you have got as your vehicle, two-wheeler or four-wheeler, you like to spend the money on your to buy the parking space. Obviously if you have a a two-wheeler, why would you go ahead and purchase the four-wheeler parking space? Because there you're gonna pay you're gonna pay more than what you're gonna pay for the two-wheeler parking. So that way we have to consider all these permutation and combinations. Now the point is, if I see this from the Excel perspective, from the VBA perspective. Now imagine you have a number, and that number is, let's say, 10. Okay, now you know that the 10 number, this value you are supposed to use somewhere. For example, you want to add two numbers, the one is 10 and the second is 20. Now you know that 10 plus 20, if you make the program in the VBA, it is going to give you 30. Now the question is that if you know that the number is 10 and the another number is 20, and they are never going to exceed a value than 255, then you will definitely go ahead and you should ideally use the byte, because byte can be used for the numbers which ranges between 0 to 255. And let's say if you are not sure about it, if you're even 1% you're not sure about it, that it may exceed then 255, it can go up to 256 or 257, 500, 10,000, so in that way definitely you will not use the byte. So this is how basically the concept is all about, right? Now I will quickly start writing this code in the VBA, so that you should understand this immediately, and then rest of the data types we will cover with the examples, right? This is going to be great fun, guys. So let's go and let's go to this Excel. Now the first thing which I want to do here is I want to actually quickly go in the developer tab in the Visual Basic, as you know, and we are going to insert the module over here. Okay, so I inserted the module over here. Now here I will write the program. Now one thing which I want to tell you, which you haven't learned yet, though you know that when you give the naming to your subroutines, to your macros, you have to take care of the the certain things, like you cannot start with any subroutine name with the number. You're not supposed to allow, you're not supposed to use any VBA keyword, you're not supposed to use any special character. You can use the underscore, and if you have to use the number, then that number has to come after your the text, after the first alphabet has to be a the text when you write the macro name. Now you should also know one important thing, that how to rename the modules, because it is always a good habit that if you have created 10 modules, instead of showing the modules as module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, module 5, module 6, you should give them some good name. So in order to give them the good name, the first thing which you need to do is you need to select the module. You can see that right now it is highlighted. Now we go to the View tab and we hit on the Properties Windows, which is F4. You can also press F4, that's all up to you, but make sure you should select that module which you want to rename. I select that, and this property module is going to come here. Okay, now this can be in your window, this can be this can come here, or this can come here, or maybe this can this can come over here. That's not the problem at all, right? It can be you can resize it, you can readjust it according to your the comfort level, but we just want to use the the name here, and then we will close it. So I'm going to name this as discussion on variables. So I'm just going to write discussion underscore variables, because why I'm using the underscore, as I said in my previous chapters, guys, it is a long name, so to make it readable I'm just using the underscore. And same way, you cannot use here any other special character. Suppose if you just go and say star and you click outside, not a legal object, so you're gonna get the error, guys. Similarly, you cannot start this with the number. For example, I say 89 and ABC, for example, I click outside, not a legal name. So all the rules which are applicable to your, when you give the name, when you give the name to your macros, those all conditions are applicable in the modules also. So it's very easy to learn. You don't have to learn these separately. Whatever conditions we have, the set of instructions we have, the criteria we have defined to name the macros, same way you have those conditions applied here. So I'm just going to name this as, let's say, the variables, and then we can write it the introduction. For example, let's give it a name called introduction. Now I click outside, and now you can see that this is immediately renamed. I do not need this now, I can close this. Okay, if I further have to rename this, I first make sure I select this and I press F4. Okay, you press F4 and you're going to be on this particular the property sheet, right? So let me correct the spellings as well, and it's introduction actually. There we go, right? So you press F4, or you go to the view, or you click on the property windows. It's one and the same thing, guys. The only thing again I'm repeating which you need to take care of is that you should be on this module. You should select that module. So let us first of all go and create the macro. If you remember from the previous macros, guys, we created the the macros. You remember, if you recorded the macros, or macros always starts with the sub name. So this is the first time we are going to write by ourselves the name of the macro. So I'm going to write it macro, and so we're going to write here understanding underscore the bytes. So we're going to start the bytes data type. I press enter, and look at this. The moment you press enter, you get the answer. So you just need to use the this open parenthesis, close parenthesis, and then the moment you press enter, end sub will be created. And now we will write our program between this sub and this end sub. This is how we will start the program. Okay, now as I was telling you that what are the variables. So basically variables are they are the values which can be reused again and again in your program. Okay, so we can reuse them with the same value, with the different value, doesn't matter. It entirely depends upon the program, but generally it is always the different value. Okay, so now the first thing is how we actually define the variables. Now as I said that in this program we will go and add two numbers, 10 plus 10. We will make a program which will give us the 10 plus 10 or 10 plus 20, whatever we want to do it. So in order to do that, you need to store that number somewhere. Now to store that number somewhere, guys, you need basically a variable. So you have to define that. So now what you're gonna do is you go here and write dim. Dim is a word. This word also known as dimension, but we don't call dimension. We always prefer calling it dim. Okay, so dim stands for dimension. So you are going to declare a variable called, let's say, I, as, then you write here byte. You remember the byte? The byte can hold 0 to 255 number, right? So this is how we write dim I as byte. And then we need one more variable because we need to add two numbers. So I go and write, let's say, j as byte. Okay, now if you're thinking that why I'm declaring them as I and j, well, there's no condition. You can declare whatever you want. You can, for example, declare them a, b, c as well, var1, var2, whatever you want to call it. But remember one thing, guys, you cannot use any the VBA word, the reserved word for this. Okay, for example, if I just go and write dim as byte, this is not allowed because dim is a VBA word, right? It's a programming word and you cannot use it, right? So rest, whatever you want to use, you can use it. Now for example, if I write I star and then let's say u, okay, now again it is a special character. So you remember all the rules which I just told you, they are same going to be applied here as well. So make sure you don't use the star, any special character, and you don't use any VBA reserved word. Okay, so this is how it is. So even if you go and use something which starts with a number, it is not going to be allowed. So while giving the name to your macro, while giving the name to your modules, while giving the name to your variables, three things we are talking here now, all the rules are going to be applied. All the rules are the same. So that's how it is so easy for us to remember. So I'm gonna just write here dim I as byte. Okay, now the second thing, after you let the VBA know when the program runs, when the VBA is going to run these lines, VBA is going to create a place for these variables in the memory in your hard disk. Okay, so now you will say that I equals to, let's say, 10 and j equals to 20, right? Now we want to add them. Now to add them, obviously we need another variable. So I just go here and say that, let's say, dim my result byte. Okay, this is a third variable, guys, which I'm declaring here. So I just go and write here my underscore result equals to I plus j. This is how we write, right? The things we need, we need to evaluate if you are if you have if you have done the I mean, if you know the math subject, in the math subject, this is a very regular kind of that maths expression where we what we want to evaluate, we always keep that to the left side, and what we, from where it is coming, that we always keep to the right side of it. Okay, so my underscore result equals to I plus j. That is how the things are going to work, right? So finally, when we run this code, let us go ahead and check that how we're going to look at these numbers. I mean, how they're going to do their job. Okay, so now you remember, if I just go and if I have to run this code step by step, if you have done a good practice in the in the day one, the chapter, if you have seen all those videos, then you know the shortcut key is F8. So I'm going to press F8 and there we go, the code starts. So the code is going to start, and if you just hover your mouse over the I, it says 10 and this says 20, right? So we got the values. I press F8 again, and if I hover my mouse back here, I can see the result 30, right? Now two things very important for you. You have to keep a note of it. Now you may not, when you hover, when you practice on this, and if you find that when you are hovering on the variable and you're not able to see the result, the value, then why is it so? Because right now if I hover, I can see the values over here, right? So why is it so? So guys, there is a what you need to do is you need to go to the tools. You go to the tools in this VBA, and here in the options, click on the option, and in the option make sure this auto data tips should be check marked. As you can see right now, it is check marked. Now by default this always remains check marked, so I don't think so you will face the problem. But let's say if I just show you, let me uncheck that, let me click OK. Now let us go ahead and run the program again. So if I just go and run this program here again, now if I hover on I, look at this, I'm trying to hover, but that the value of the I is not showing up, right? So it does not mean the code will not run. Of course code will run, but these are the additional facilities as a programmer you would like to see. These are your weapons, right? So just imagine if I have to see whether this value is coming there or not, it is correct or incorrect, how is it? I can't see that. And that's a very weird situation as a programmer, right? Obviously you want to check that, right? So make sure if you have this kind of a difficulty, you can't see when you hover your mouse on the variables, then just you go to the tool and the option, and this auto data tips should be check marked. Okay, now I know that there are so many other options here, but we will discuss them as we move ahead. Okay, so when the right time comes, we keep on discussing all these things. Right now you need to take care of this auto data tips option. So I click OK. Now I go and press F8 again, and look at this. Now let's have a look. You can see that now the values are again coming, the pop-up is coming the moment I hover. Okay, now my result is equals to 0, obviously because we haven't run this line yet. So the moment I run this line, it says 30, which is good. Now this is all about when you hover. But if you have created 10 variables, you cannot go to every variable and keep on hovering, right? So there is another tool which we use a lot. In fact, you have to use this every time when you do the testing in the code. Testing means debugging, running this on the F8 mode before you give the code to your audience. So what you have to do is you go to the view, and here you click on the local window. When you click on the local window, guys, this is how the window would come. It may come somewhere here in your window like this, or it may come, I don't know, I mean how it is gonna come, maybe here, maybe here. As you can see, I can move this anywhere, and if I double click here, it is going to fit over here, right? And I can also reduce the width of this. Okay, so this all depends how comfortable you are with this kind of a view. If you're not comfortable, just put it outside this, just drag this. Okay, you can drag this, you can put this anywhere. For example, right now I'm gonna put it over here. Okay, now what is it? Let's go and check that. Now this is called the local window because it let you know about all your variable values as the program runs. Now right now this looks empty whiteboard to you, but the moment you run the code, for example, we're gonna run this code. Look at this, guys. The moment I run this F8, I can see here now some values automatically popping up over here. So I can also increase the width, I can adjust that. You can reduce the height as well. That's very simple, just the way you handle the Excel, drag the things. So now look at this. Now this basically tells me about the the module name variable introduction. But the important part which you need to see here is the variables. Now you see that we have created here three variables, I and j and my result, and all the variables are coming here, right? I, j and my result. We did not uh, have to add anything. It's by default coming, right? Their values are also coming 0 0 0, because right now the code is just begun. We haven't run these lines yet, this area yet, right? And this is basically your type, so you can also resize it like this. Okay, so this is the type byte, this is the type byte, and this is the byte. So whatever the types we have given, the moment you run this code now here, the moment I run this I equals to 10, you can see that in the watch window I get to see here I is 10, and similarly j as 20, and then my result is going to be shown as 30. Now what do you mean by that? Obviously the code is working here and the values are coming here. So instead of me hovering here, I can also use this local window. This is the best part of it. Now suppose if you say that the my result is coming 30, but you were expecting something else, you can immediately go and check the line, that what is the problem actually. So this is a very good tool and we will use it a lot, right? So remember, this is called the local window. So the moment you run this F8, you see that the variables are gone, guys. Why? Because these variables are active in your memory. VBA uses them, VBA stores them in your memory, in your hard disk, only till the time the macro is running. And when the macro finishes, they are gone, they are disappeared. VBA releases them, VBA destroys them, and the space which these variables have taken, that's going to be released. So it's going to free up your the hard disk. Okay, now if you're wondering that what sort of space they take, well, if you look at this the day2 and if you look at the storage size, this is how it takes. So every byte, data type byte, is going to take 1 byte of your space. Okay, well, you don't really have to get into this kind of a detail, but for your to be a good programmer, we should at least know the basics, right? So that is how. So what we have learned is that these are all called the local variables, guys. Okay, I will be talking about that in the coming sessions. Local variables means basically they are active till the time the macro is running. So till the time the macro is running, they are available. When the macro finishes, it's gone, right? So this is the first thing. Now the second thing which I want to do here is now just in case if I ask you a question, so what do you think if I change the value of this I? Okay, or maybe not here, let's keep it like this. Let me just copy the entire code here, copy it and paste it here. So if you remember that whenever you record any new macro, you remember I was telling you about the line, this line gets inserted automatically. So same happens when you actually create the another macro. So I've just created another macro for you. Now in this macro, if I go and run this, look at this, what's going to happen. Ambiguous name detected. Now whenever you get this error, guys, ambiguous means unclear, right? If you see this word in the dictionary, you would get to understand this means that's unclear. What is unclear to the VBA? This understanding bytes, because the moment you run the code, and when you run the code, the code stops here on this line. That means this line actually is giving you the bug. So why it is so? Because you have already used this name here, so you cannot, guys, reuse the same macro again. So I'm just gonna write it as byte 2. Okay, so now we should be able to use it. Now what I will do, if I just go and ask you that, if I just say that this is a 400, now what do you think, guys? Will this code run? Will you have the answer as 420 in the my result? Maybe you can pause the video, you can give it a thought, and then see that if you have given the correct answer or not. Okay, so now what happens, you see yourself, the moment I run this line I equals to 400, you will get the error overflow. What do you mean by the overflow? Now this is the best part about the VBA. I think I said this in my previous videos also. You will learn a lot from the errors, and I'm gonna make you a champion in understanding the errors, right? Because if you can understand the errors, you can sort out the issues in seconds. Now guys, whenever you get the overflow error, Remember one thing, overflow means that something you are trying to, you know, use which is not within the capacity. So it's like, in a container of 5 liters, which can hold 5 liter of water. If you're going to put the, 6 liter of water, obviously 1 liter will be overflow, isn't it? Right, so that 1 liter is going to be overflown and it cannot hold. Why? Because it is meant to hold only 5 liters. So this is why when you click on the debug is what? Debug takes you to the error line. If you remember, in the first chapter we learned an error called subscript out of a range. What do you mean by the subscript out of a range? Well, that is the error when you are trying to find out the object which does not exist. It can be a sheet name, it can be a workbook name. Okay, so I click on the debug and this is the line which is generating the error, and that makes a sense, guys, to us. You know why the error is coming? Because you basically cannot use any number greater than 255 under the byte type. This we have seen here. You can see here is 0 to 255, isn't it? So that is why you will get the error called overflow. So we cannot do this. If you are supposed to use a value greater than 255, please don't use that as a byte. Okay, now for example, now what I do is I just go and make this as, something else. Maybe let's say I go and make this another data type which can hold this number, this 400 number. Which data type? If you look at this integer, this holds a number which is, I'm not talking about the boolean right now. Let's talk about the integer. Integer can hold 32,768 number from negative to positive, right? So that means integer can really hold this 400 number. So if you just go and write here, as integer, and now if you think you're thinking that the code is going to run, you're wrong. Look at this. Now the I equals to 400 has run. You don't see the error like we saw in the previous code, obviously, because I is now integer. But the point is, the value which you're going to pass in the my result variable, that's not gonna hold that value. Again, you will have the same error because 400 plus 20 will make it 420. So you can't use my result as a byte then. So you make sure you have to change this again. Otherwise you will get the overflow error, right? So we will correct this code obviously, but not in this, so that you can practice it. So I just go right here that this macro is, or I should write this subroutine is giving the overflow error, so that when you practice you should be able to understand it. Okay, so now let us go ahead and let us talk about the next data type, which is the integer. So now you understood, guys, that basis the values we have to take care of all these things, what value we are using. So now I go and I say that understanding the integer. Now this time we'll make the some little changes in order to make the code interesting. Now I was using all the values directly in the VBA, but this time we will pick it up, these values from the Excel. So let me just resize this. Let's go to the Excel also. So let's say, guys, here we have two values. The first value is 200 and maybe 2000, and the second value is 1000. So now the program will remain the same, but this time we will use the values from the A3 and A4 cell, right? And we know that how we can use this. Okay, so let's go and talk about this. So I'll put this local window somewhere here. I can just simply drag this. Initially it takes little time, my friends, to adjust with this kind of environment, especially to put them somewhere in the as per your convenience. But it's a very it's something which comes naturally as you keep on using it, right? So just give yourself a little time. Don't get frustrated, because I know sometimes you get angry on these things when you're not able to resize them properly, adjust them properly. So I have put the local window in front of you, okay, here, and now let's start the program. So I'm gonna declare a variable dim I as this time I declare this as integer, then j as integer, and let's say dim final as integer. Okay, now what is the value of the I? So this time I'm not writing here 100 or anything. I directly write that it is coming from my range A3 dot value. Okay, dot value. This is how you write it, dot value, right? Now don't write here select, okay, because you don't want to select the value, you don't want to select the cell. Dot select is what does the dot select does? It actually selects the cell. You don't want to select the cell, you simply want to get the value in the variable I, from this A2, so A3, A4, whatever. So we just use the value. Okay, so as you know, we are going to keep the I on the left side because I is what we want to evaluate. Similarly, we go and write j equals to range and then A4 dot value. So I can remove the space over here. So finally we have got I and j, and then we will say final equals to I plus j. The same code, okay, but this time we are using it directly from the Excel. Okay, and one more thing we want to do, guys, which is I want to put the sum of these two numbers over here in this yellow cell, which is A7. Okay, so what will you write here? Now A7 you want to evaluate, obviously, because it is a blank. So you write here now range A7 dot value equals to final. This is how you write. Okay, because final, when this line will be executed, final will have its value coming from I and j. So let's go and run the code. So I press F8. Now look at this. All the three variables are displaying here and they are all integers, right? So let's start the code. So the first line, when it runs, I got the value from A3, which is 2000. Then you got the value from this A4, and finally we have the final as 3000. Now this final 3000 is going to be transferred to this A7, which is empty, and we have the answer over here, right? Now many of you must be thinking, or many of you, if I give you this kind of a program to write, maybe you can do this sort of thing, that final equals to range A7 dot value, because this is how I used to do this mistake. Now I'll tell you, this line is not gonna work for you. Maybe you are thinking that the value of the final will go in the A7 and again you will have this answer as 3000. No guys, that is not how it is going to work, because as a rule the value which you want to evaluate, that you need to keep to the left side. Okay, but here you are keeping the value to the right side. A7 is what you want to evaluate. So what will happen, actually, look at this, you will understand this. So I run this. So finally you have I as 2000, j as 1000, and final as 3000. So far so good. Now look at this, I'm gonna run this again, this line. What happened? Neither you get the value here, nor the value which was supposed to come here, 3000, it's coming. In fact, it is now turned to 0. Let me rerun the code again. Look at this. You have the 3000. The moment I run this code, 3000 becomes 0. Why? It's very simple, guys, because you see, once you get the 3000, you're telling the VBA, it's a simple math, that the final has to be equals to A7 dot value. Now in the A7, what you have? You don't have anything. It is empty. So actually you are saying that final has to be 0. Final variable has to be empty. This is how the code is going to read. So this value 3000, the moment you're gonna run this line, this will be equals to A7, which is empty, and then you will have the 0. So that is why it is very important for us that we should keep the value which we want to evaluate to the left side. So this is the incorrect way of writing. Remember that. Okay, I will not remove this so that you can practice. I'm just commenting it out. I'm just putting the apostrophe here. You remember, right, how to comment the things, aren't you? So this is how the code works. Now let's go and let's say that suppose what if I have to let's say add 50,000. Now what do you think, guys? Is it going to run? If I run this code, are you going to get here 51,000? Well, you know the limit of the integer, right? The limit of the integer is 32,000 to 768, right? So I just go and write here 32k, approximately 32k, isn't it? So Of course, I will send you this PPT also. You can keep a note of it. Now the thing is that this value is 50,000. So first of all, my question to you is that which line will throw the error and what will be the error? So guys, the error will definitely come when this line is going to run, because here I will try to I will try to absorb 50,000 from this A3, and being the data type as integer, it VBA will not allow, and you will get the error called overflow. So the moment I run this, look at this, you'll get the overflow error. So now you're understanding the overflow error, right? So this is not gonna work. So what you have to do, well, if your number is greater than 32,000, 32 whatever it is, 700, then you should be using the next data type. Which data type? That's going to be the long, this one data type, the long data type. And you can see that it really holds a big number. I think this would be in billions, right? You don't have to really remember all these numbers, but you should know the hierarchy. Okay, so let's go and use the long now. So I will quickly go here and I will just copy this entire stuff over here. I'm just gonna write here, and now here I will change the code so that I should not be getting that ambiguous error again. So this is gonna be long, and now I will change this to long. Okay, so now when you change this to long, now what will happen, the final should also be long because the sum has to go there. If your j is 1000 now, or it remains within the integer limit, we don't have any problem, keep it like this. But if you have even 1%, you're not sure that it can go up to, it can go beyond 32,700, whatever the limit we have defined for the long, please, for the integer, I beg your pardon, please don't use the integer then. Just make sure you should use this long. Okay, so let's go and run this. So I just remove this. Now this time you see that the data type long is coming, and you have the answer, and finally you got the 51,000. Wonderful, very easy to understand, I hope, right? It's making a lot of sense to you. So if you see the hierarchy wise, so first it comes the byte in the ascending order, then you have the integer, and then you have the long, right? Now the thing is, I'm going to put something very interesting here for you. Now you saw this code, okay? I'm just going to copy this code here, and I'm going to paste it here again. And so let's say we just go and declare here for the time being, let's say I write here 1 2 3, okay, just like that. Now my question to you is that if I just go and put here, let's say 5.4, and this is, let's say, 10. Now if you run this code, guys, this code, what do you think? Are you going to get 10 plus 5.4, or will you get the error? Or will you get the you will not get the error, but the value will be incorrect? Think on that, right? Pause the video, think on that. Now let me tell you. So what happens when you run this code? First of all, look at this. Your j has got the value 5. It is not picking up the 5.4. The reason is because the long cannot be used for decimals. Long is not going to work on the decimals. If you are fine with the 5, no problem, you can use it. But if you are working in a call center, industry, a BPO industry, or maybe in any industry where the transaction really matters, and service level, SLAs, service level agreements really matter, where you are being paid by the client basis your service delivery, where 80%, 90% of the targets, and so there, even the decimal matter a lot. So you will not like to do this kind of a mistake, isn't it? So when I run this program, so finally what will happen, you will get the answer as 10 plus 5, which is 15. Now two things are coming out from here. The one is, if you do not get the error, that does not mean the code will always be right. In this example in front of you, there is no error coming, guys. There is no error coming. So what does that mean? The code is correct? Of course it is not. You can see that 10 plus 5.4 is not the 15. So that's going to be incorrect code. So if you do not debug the code, if you do not do the testing on the F8 mode, and you send it out to your team, trust me, one day they will come back to you, and that can be an escalation, which I will really, want you to avoid it. So do the debugging, do the proper testing before you send out that code to anyone. So what is the solution for this? Well, the first thing which you need to understand that long is still able to run this code. It's not showing the error overflow. Why overflow? Because it's within the reach, right? Long is a big number. It can hold a big number, right? But the point is, long is not made for the decimals. Long is made for the whole numbers, not for the decimal numbers, right? So if you're dealing with the decimals, then you have to switch to the next data type. Now what is that? What is that next data type? Okay, so that next data type actually is called the single. If you look at the single, now it's really a big number, guys, but the best part of this is that it can be used for the decimals. So let's quickly go and see that. So here, understanding, when I say 1 2 3, instead of that I can write understanding integer, and then I'm going to write here integer issue. Okay, so you will remember this, that this is creating problem for decimals. Okay, if you're gonna put the decimal over there. Okay, so now let's go and copy the entire code again. I just go and copy the code, paste it here. Make sure you just rename this to, you know, let's say single. Okay, so now what we will do, guys, I just quickly go and replace this long with the single. Okay, and then this as well. So everything I'm gonna put here single. Now you see what's gonna happen. So when I run this now, look at in the watch window, you got the 5.4, you got the 10, and you got the answer as 15.4. So what we have concluded from this exercise, you got the 15.4. This means that single is more powerful than, you know, your this long. So single is not just powerful, but also it can be used for the decimals, right? So if it covers the decimal, naturally it is going to cover the whole number also, guys. Okay, for example, if I just go and, you know, change this to, let's say, 10. Okay, now you know this is a whole number, so does that mean it's not gonna work? Of course it is going to work. So when you run this, you see that it is going to pick up the 10 from here and the 10 from here, and finally you have answer 20, which you can see here, right? So single basically is used, it covers the decimals as well as whole numbers, right? Now the thing is, though I never actually had faced any situation, you know, where I get to handle a number which really is a big decimal number, where we have more than 5 decimal numbers. For example, if I just write here 1 2 3 and 4, okay, and now if I just run this code, you see that what's gonna happen. The moment I run this code, you get here the value which is correct. You got 10.1234, and then you got 10 as well, and then you just adding them and you have the answer. Very nice. Okay, great. Now let's say I just add one more number over here, 8, and now I run the code again. You can see that even that is also captured, right? So it can really take care of the 5 decimal numbers. Now if I just go and write here one more decimal, for example 6, and now if I run this code, now look at this, guys. This is what I wanted to tell you. It actually has rounded up the last number 9, right? Because the last number, actually the 6 is greater than 5, so it rounded up this, you know, the 8 to 9, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that this can hold 5 decimals, you know, the accuracy till 5 decimal. But if you have really a number which is again further to 5 decimals, for example 6 7, you know, 8, sort of this number, now you have to make sure that you should be using the correct decimal for that. So right click and go to the format cells, because I'm using so many decimals over here. So I just go to the number and I have to increase this. So this is going to be, I think, yeah, this is the one, right? So this is the number, and same I have to do here, you know, the same number I have to do here. I'm just trying to increase the decimal numbers. Now in this case, obviously the single will fail. Now I have never ever worked on such kind of a situation where I have to deal with, you know, such a highly, you know, this the number which is so big in the decimals, right? But you should be knowing it, that if you have that sort of challenge, then you can further go ahead and you can, you know, use the another data type, which is the highest data type, which is known as the double, right? Double also covers the decimal numbers, guys. If I show you here, you see that double is fantastic. Double is really big number. Okay, so it takes care of the floating points or the decimal points, whatever you want to call it. Now if I run this program, you see that the single failed to show us the all the values, right? So I beg your pardon, let me reset the code, and I just put here double. I forgot to put the double here, so we're gonna put the double here, and here again I'm going to put the double. Okay, so now let's go and run the code. Now you can see that it picked up the entire number. Look at this here, right? So we have got the entire number, right? So we have got this 10.123, and then you know the entire number. So this is how, guys, the double actually works. Okay, so if you look at this, this is the number. Look at in the formula bar 678, because when I was running this over here, this was not showing exactly the same 1 2 3 and then you know 1 2 3 4 8 and then 6 8. It's actually 678 if you look at in the formula bar, right? Actually I have to increase, you know, I have to go to the format cell and I have to increase this decimal by one more value, I think. Yeah, that is how it is, right? So so double takes care of it, and I think double can look up to I think 11 or 12 digits, the decimal digits, right? Which is a very high level of accuracy, isn't it, right? So that's how we have the byte, we have the integer, we have the long, we have the single, and we have the double. And of course if you just put here some whole number, you know, if you just put here some, you know, number called, let's say 3, and I change it back to, you know, this 0, then obviously this will work. You know, double will not create any problem, because as I said, double can also take care of the whole numbers. So far, if we see the hierarchy, so let me just write here, hierarchy wise the data types, because they're gonna ask you in your interview. Okay, they're gonna ask you in your interview that what sort of data types you know, and if you have to give them arrange them in the ascending order, how you gonna arrange them, right? So answer to both these questions, right? So the first thing, let's say they say that how many data types do you know? Okay, so you can first of all, let's start with the first question. What are the variables? Okay, so what are the variables, guys? You know that the variables are used in VBA to reuse the values in your program. So you can write it like this, right? Then you can also tell that variables comes in different types, you know, and we call them data types. The variables have the different data types. You can tell them, so variables comes in the byte data type, then they have the you know, integer, then they have the long, then they have the single, and they have the then double. This is how we define them. Nobody's really gonna ask you what value they can hold, because nobody can remember that, but I would suggest you, at least you should be knowing the byte integer, you know, because they are very easy. So you can tell them the byte can hold up to 0 to 55 number. Remember, no negative number. Integer can hold up to 32k to positive 32k. You can give them the approximation, right? For the exact, obviously if you remember the exact word, the exact range, nothing like it, then you can see here we have got this 32768, right? So long can really hold a big number, no need to remember. Then single and the double. So basically the hierarchy follows in this way. This is your ascending order. Okay, now another interesting question which they can ask you, and you will find this in my YouTube also under the playlist called Excel VBA Access Interview Questions. So they can ask you that what is the similarity? What is the similarity? Similarity between, you know, byte, integer, long, and single and double, you know, all these data types. So what is the similarity, guys? Obviously all these data types are used to hold numbers, isn't it? Right? This is what you're supposed to tell, right? Okay, now if they ask you that, what is the difference then? So what is the difference? This is a question which I used to ask, you know, when I used to interview people. What is the difference between group 1 and group 2? So let's say this is what I have put it in front of you. Now the group 1 actually has byte, integer and long, okay, and the group 2 on the other side has the single and the double. So this is your group 2 and this is your group 1. So you tell me, what is the difference, guys? Give it a thought, pause the video. So the difference is that the single and the doubles can be used for the decimals, right? And they can be used for the whole numbers also, right? So they can be used for whole numbers and especially for the decimals, okay? But the byte and integer and the long can only be used for whole numbers, right? Not for decimals at all, right? They will not give the error, but the point is they will not give the error, but then the output will also be incorrect. So these are the things, you know, you're supposed to take care of it. So that is how, this is the difference you need to remember it. Okay, this is a very, very important question. You should be able to answer it. Okay. All right. Now the another question which comes into our mind is that you know, I'm sure you must be thinking of this thing. If you haven't given it a thought, then listen to this question very carefully. Now, if I know that the double is the most powerful data type, then why I should even go and bother myself to, you know, even give it a thought on the byte, integer and long and single, because double covers everything. So why not we just go simply and declare every variable as double? Give it a thought, guys, isn't it? If I ask you this question, you know, that all right, so you have given me the hierarchy in a very proper way, and that's really great, you know, each and everything. But now could you please tell me that if double is used for the decimals and double is used for the whole numbers, and in fact it is the more, it can really hold a biggest number, it's more powerful than long, single and integer byte, why do even I, you know, go and use the byte, integer, long, single? What is the need of it? Let's go and declare every variable as double. Now what you have to say here now? Now guys, technically speaking, you can definitely go and run the code by declaring every variable as double. VBA will not mind it. There is no challenge in that, and many people, they do even that. Some people knowingly, some people unknowingly. But as a good programmer, you have to tell your interviewer that as a good programmer, I also need to take care of the, you know, the speed part, the execution part, how much time it is taking, right? Now if you look at the hierarchy, so what happens basically, if you are using, let's say 50-60 variables, and all you have declared as a double, every variable is gonna take 8 bytes. And let's say if those variables, you know, if those values can be managed, for example with the byte or with the integer, then I can save a lot of space in my memory, because the byte integer takes very less space, and then long, and then, you know, so on, right? So double is going to take a lot of space. So lot of space means you will have the lot of memory, you know, being used, and obviously that will impact the speed of your macro. Now this, we are talking about the situation where you are really running a big macro. We are not talking about here the macros which are just 50 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 lines. I think it really doesn't matter where there you, even if you try to save the time, it's not gonna do much of the benefit to you, because, you know, macros, they run so fast, guys. We are talking about here a really very big program, right? So there we really need to take care if you're using so many variables. I remember when I used to work, you know, there was a macro which was supposed to upload the data from the server, okay, it was supposed to upload the data in the from the server, not in the Excel but in the MS Access database, and that used to take almost 3 hours. The data was so big, right? So during that programs, you really need to take care of these things. So you can tell them, technically speaking, you can declare every data type as double. If it is a number, code will work. But as a programmer, as a good programmer, I will also like to keep some checks, like if I can manage with the byte or integer, I will not definitely go and use the long and the single and the double, because then I can avoid the unnecessarily extra space which the VB is going to use, right? So that way the program will also run the fast. But yes, if I have even the slightest of slight doubt that this variable can exceed 255 value, for example, I will never ever use this byte. Once I am 101% sure, only then I will be going to use this. So that is how it is. So this is the answer you need to give it. Okay, now in the next video we're going to talk about the other data types, the string and the variant. They are very important. So I see you in my next video, guys. Thank you so much.